What do you do when the Chancellor of the Exchequer is systematically destroying everything that makes Britain worth living in? You go to the pub, obviously. Except now, Rachel Reeves is coming for those too. 8 pubs are closing every single week in the UK. 8. That's not just a statistic, that's the systematic dismantling of British culture. And what's Reeves doing about it? Absolutely nothing. In fact, she's making it worse. Business rates are going up, employers' national insurance has been hiked, and pubs are being suffocated by socialist economic policies that were clearly dreamed up by someone who's never had to worry about paying a bill in their life. One columnist has had enough. They're seriously considering leaving the country. And honestly, can you blame them? When the one sanctuary you have from thinking about how broken Britain has become is being systematically destroyed by the very people who promised to protect it, what's left? Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where we document the death of everything good about this country. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves' latest mad idea and why it might be the final straw that pushes people to leave Britain for good. So let's start with the piece itself, because it's absolutely dripping with frustration and despair. The author describes walking down the streets of their West London suburb thinking about how screwed Britain is. And who inevitably pops into their head? Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor has become so synonymous with Britain's decline that you can't even take a walk without being mentally haunted by her face. The author describes her as crushing any remnants of endorphins into an oblivion she's fashioned with her parody of economic stewardship. That's not just criticism, that's poetry. Dark, depressing, accurate poetry. Because that's exactly what Reeves has done. She's taken an economy that was already struggling and made it demonstrably worse with policies that seem designed to punish anyone trying to run a business or make a living. The landscape of Britain under Labour is described as so depressing that thinking of England risks thoughts not of churches, green fields, and pubs, but of a grey hellscape tortured by technocrats. This is what we've come to. England used to conjure images of pastoral beauty, historic architecture, and community gathering places. Now it conjures images of bureaucrats in gray suits implementing regulations that nobody asked for and nobody wants. The technocrats have taken over, and they're systematically destroying the character of the nation in pursuit of their economic theories that have never worked anywhere they've been tried. But here's where it gets interesting. The author has a coping mechanism. When Rachel Reeves' vacuous visage and artificially authoritative groan, that's their description of her voice, becomes too much to bear, they have an escape plan. They go to the pub. A couple of pints of Guinness, or if truly blessed by Providence, Murphy Stout. This is the great British tradition. When life gets hard, when the politicians let you down, when everything seems miserable, you go to your local. You sit with your pint, you chat with the regulars, you forget about your problems for a couple of hours. The pub isn't just a business, it's a social institution. It's where communities are built. It's where friendships are maintained. It's where you can escape from the gray technocratic hellscape and remember that life can still be good. Except Rachel Reeves is destroying that too. The author reveals that Reeves is doing everything in her power to make it harder for pubs to survive. And without their survival, that escape plan is torn from the list of ways to mute the mental torture. This is the crux of the issue. It's not just that Labour's economic policies are bad, it's that they're destroying the very institutions that make life in Britain bearable. They're not just making the economy worse, they're making existence worse. They're taking away the small pleasures, the community spaces, the escapes that people rely on to get through difficult times. And they're doing it while claiming to care about working people and British institutions. The hypocrisy is staggering. The specific issue is business rates. Keir Starmer himself has admitted that pubs will struggle with the new business rates changes. Let that sink in. The Prime Minister knows that his government's policy will harm pubs. He's admitted it publicly, and they're doing it anyway. That's not incompetence, that's deliberate. They know the damage they're causing, and they don't care. Or maybe they do care, but they've decided that their economic theories are more important than the actual lived experiences of British people. And this is happening against a backdrop that's already catastrophic for pubs. 8 pubs are closing every single week in the UK. Every week. That's over 400 pubs a year. These aren't just businesses closing, these are community hubs disappearing. These are jobs being lost. These are pieces of British culture being erased. And they're struggling because of rises in employers' national insurance, which the author brilliantly describes as another socialist frog that should have been aborted. The national insurance hike was one of Labour's first major policy decisions. They promised not to raise taxes on working people and then immediately hiked employers' national insurance, which of course gets passed on to workers through lower wages and to customers through higher prices. Pubs, which operate on notoriously thin margins, were hit particularly hard. Let's break down why pubs are so vulnerable to these policies. Pubs employ a lot of people relative to their revenue. They're labor-intensive businesses. When you hike employers' national insurance, you're directly increasing their biggest cost. They can't easily pass that cost on because their customers are the same working people who are also being squeezed by the cost of living crisis. So pubs are caught in a vice. Costs going up, customer spending going down. The business rates increase is the same problem. It's a fixed cost that has to be paid regardless of whether the pub is making money. For pubs in expensive areas or in struggling communities, that business rate can be the difference between survival and closure. The author points out that Labour has insisted it cares about pubs as a great British institution. And that's true, they have said that. Labour politicians love to be photographed in pubs, pint in hand, looking like one of the lads. They talk about pubs as the heart of communities. They acknowledge their cultural importance. But in January 2026, when the Chancellor had the opportunity to actually help pubs, she refused to do anything. Actions speak louder than words. You can say you care about pubs all you want, but if your policies are actively killing them and you refuse to change your policies, then you don't actually care. You just like the photo opportunities. The narcissist accusation is fascinating because it reframes the entire issue. The author says they now know Rachel Reeves is a narcissist because she's become inescapable. Even when you're trying to enjoy your life, even when you're walking down the street or sitting in a pub, she's there, in your head. Her policies are so all-encompassing, so destructive, that you can't escape them. And the author imagines Reeves sitting there smiling, sure in the knowledge that people are thinking of her policies. She'll become the woman around whom the world revolves, which is exactly the outcome a narcissist would want. Now, whether Reeves is actually a narcissist in the clinical sense is unknowable from the outside, but the metaphor works because her policies do seem designed to insert government into every aspect of life. Higher taxes, more regulations, more intervention. The government under Reeves is unavoidable. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the goal is to make everyone dependent and beholden to the state. The consideration of leaving the country is where this gets really serious. This isn't just venting. This is a person genuinely wondering whether Britain is worth staying in. And they're not alone. Anecdotally, there are increasing numbers of people, particularly professionals and business owners, who are looking at other countries. Lower taxes in other places, better weather, less bureaucracy, governments that don't seem to actively hate success. When people start seriously considering leaving, you've got a problem, because these are usually the people you want to keep. The economically productive, the entrepreneurs, the skilled workers. If they leave, they take their tax revenue, their innovation, their energy with them. And Britain becomes poor, both economically and culturally. The broader context is that Britain does feel broken right now. The economy isn't growing. Public services aren't working properly. Infrastructure is crumbling. The social contract feels like it's collapsing. People are working harder and getting poorer. And the government's response has been to make it worse. Higher taxes, more regulations, more intervention. At some point, people give up. They stop trying to make it work. They stop believing that things will improve. And they start looking for the exit. That's where Britain is right now. Not everyone, obviously, but a growing number of people. And once that mentality takes hold, it's very hard to reverse. The pub issue is symbolic of a larger problem. Labour doesn't understand business. They don't understand how markets work. They don't understand that when you increase costs for businesses, those businesses either pass those costs on to customers, reduce quality, pay workers less, or close. There's no magic money tree. There's no way to just tax businesses more and expect everything to continue as normal. And the businesses that suffer most from this ignorance are small businesses with thin margins, like pubs. The big corporations can absorb cost increases. They have economies of scale. They have financial cushions. They have lawyers and accountants to minimize their tax burden.
Small businesses don't have those advantages. So when labor implements policies that increase business costs, it's small businesses that die, and with them, the character of British high streets and communities. There's also the class dimension. The politicians implementing these policies are wealthy. Rachel Reeves has never had to worry about whether her local pub will survive. She'll always be able to afford her drinks. She'll always have access to nice restaurants and members clubs and all the rest. The people suffering from her policies are working class and middle class Britons who rely on pubs as affordable social spaces. For many people, the pub is the only place they can afford to socialize. It's cheaper than restaurants, more social than sitting at home, and it's a space that welcomes everyone. When you destroy pubs, you're destroying one of the few remaining communal spaces that exists across class lines, and you're doing it while claiming to represent working people. The hypocrisy is staggering. The 8 pubs a week statistic deserves more attention because it's shocking. That's not a temporary blip. That's a sustained trend. Over 400 pubs a year. Some of these pubs have been around for centuries. They've survived wars, recessions, social changes, and they're being killed by Rachel Reeves' economic policies. There's something profoundly sad about that. These buildings, these institutions, these communities, all being sacrificed on the altar of socialist economic theory that doesn't even work, because that's